The July this happened during came with hell on its heels. By mid-month, the heat was enough to send even the most summer-loving of people for the air conditioning. The only relief, and it was a small relief, came in the night when the molten sun finally went and cooked someone else, but its fog of heat still smothered the area. Sleep came for me in spurts when not drowning in a pool of my own sweat. 2 fans in my room buzzed and thumped, pushing hot air around like a blender's blade against a smoothie. I gave up around midnight, sleep just not finding me. There's a lot your mind does when you're tired but can't sleep. It plays with the shadows in the room like some kind of puppet master, filling in things where there's nothing. I thought about turning the lights on and trying to read, but any more drawl in the crappy breaker box would probably pop the breaker again, and there was no way I turned off the fans. So I just laid there and let my mind drift while one of the few breezes of night blew against the window fan and made the shadows of the bushes outside my window dance on the walls. Was it really a breeze? My imagination quickly came up with a number of possible demons that could be out there. My breath came short as I tried to shut down that line of thinking. So what if a kid disappeared down the block from me? That didn't mean a damn thing. I couldn't lie there any longer. My mind wouldn't let go of the idea that something was outside the window. I sighed and got up, my boxers sticking to me like a second skin. The air felt even hotter when standing up, and I groaned as I picked up a water bottle from my desk and went to the window. Even the air from the fan felt warm. I gulped down some water as I pushed back the curtain and peered out into the summer night. Past the bushes, I could see my backyard where it butted up against a cornfield. The stalks already made a knee-high wall that I couldn't see through. I stared out at the green field and thought about the news story that played on the radio on my way home from work. With the weather like it was, a few people took to sleeping outside to catch the breeze. And like most summers, there were a lot of kids camping out on their lawns. Apparently at some point in the night, something came and dragged 2 kids out of their tent. The tent was shredded, and so were the sleeping bags inside. No blood was found. The police think it was a bear or a big cat that came down from the mountains and dragged the kids away. The guy on the radio thought it was some pedophile who targeted the 2 kids since the food wasn't even touched. Apparently. There was still a hunt going on to find the kids, or at least their remains. They lived just down the road. I even saw them on their bikes once or twice. Shitty fucking world. I took another swig of water and bent down to place my forehead against the fan for more of the cool air. That's when I noticed the rustling. It started just at the edge of my vision, a flicker of a cornstalk. If I hadn't been scaring myself, I doubt I would have even noticed. But I did, and I watched the ripple move across the field like some giant worm burrowed underneath. Maybe they were right and it was a mountain lion. I don't know what possessed me to get a pair of jeans on and pick up my rifle, but I did both and was out the door. I stood on my back porch, loaded around into the gun, and listened. The crickets had stopped their incessant squeaking. Even the cicadas had quieted. Just the sound of wind played under the cloudless night. Quiet didn't even begin to explain the silence. There was nothing. My breathing sounded thunderous to my ears. Then there was more shuffling in the field. About 30 yards away they appeared. Fireflies. 2 green, slowly blinking lights, and then 2 more. Then what looked like 100 appeared in the eaves of dark beneath the hanging leaves of corn. I let my guard down for a split second until I realized they weren't fireflies, but were eyes, and they were staring right at me. I put the stock of the rifle against my shoulder and fired once into the corn as the eyes moved. The gunshot didn't even faze them. In my panic, I dropped the gun and ran for the door. In that second, I heard the sounds of something coming from the field. When I reached the door, that sound became breathing. When I was inside, it became the sound of nails on wood, clawing at the door to get in. I may have screamed, but if I did, it was lost in the growls that were outside my door that was only half closed. I pushed against it as something else pushed from the other side. With all my strength, I managed to get the door latched. Whatever it was began to bang against the door, their growls and grunts becoming louder as I laid back against the kitchen cabinet and swore. I wanted to see what it was, but was too afraid to even look. I never saw eyes that glowed on their own. A crash came from my room. I pissed myself a bit as I struggled to my feet. I hooked my way into the hallway and stumbled toward my room. Something very large struggled with a small opening left behind by the window fan. The face was almost human-like, with a muzzle. Its eyes glowed the yellow-green I'd seen outside. Anything else about the creature was lost to me as I slammed the door and searched for something to block it with. I hid in the closet at the end of the hall after I blocked my bedroom door with a shelf. The things outside stayed there all night, the sounds of their growls and barks just chilling. The one that had gotten in would try to break the door down every couple of minutes before it went back to destroying my room. The heat no longer bothered me. My fear kept me cool enough. At some point I fell asleep. I couldn't believe it either when I opened my eyes. I sat there on old shoes and moth-eaten coats and listened. Birds were chirping. Sunlight bled in from under the door. I gave a sigh of relief and opened it. The hall was empty. Morning had finally come. I got out from the closet and used the wall to keep my stiff body upright as I went from my room. I removed the shelf and slowly opened the door to peer in. The room lay in shambles. The plaster walls were shredded by large claw marks. Stuffing from my bed littered the floor. The window frame looked like someone used it as a punching bag. It barely stayed in place and the panes of glass were gone. But there was nothing there. For a moment I wondered if it really had just been a mountain lion, and in my tiredness I made up the creature. Outside I found my rifle and more claw marks. I picked it up and went out into the yard, carefully with the gun against my shoulder. Their blood was the same color as their eyes. I must have hit one of them with my panic shot because there was a long trail of blood back into the corn. Following it crossed my mind, but so did the scene from Jurassic Park and the raptors. I decided not to. For a long time I stood at the edge of the field and stared out at the pink hue of the horizon. Try as I might, I couldn't come to terms with what I had seen or what I found in the morning. Later that day, I heard on the radio that another child had gone missing in the night, and the remains of the first two were found at the edge of a cornfield, not far from the one behind my house. I moved soon after and never slept at night for those few weeks it took to find our place. A few more kids went missing that time, some adults too. There were things out there in the fields, hiding among the corn and the weeds, and their eyes looked just like fireflies.